ZILELIAN is a New York writer and English teacher. Hello. Her debut novel, The Legacy of Lost Things, which is totally awesome, was released March 2015, Bleeding Hearts Publications. She's also on national tour, by the way. Just saying. She was also the recipient of the 2014 Tolian Literary Award. Her work has been published in several anthologies and over 25 literary journals. Wow. She has read her work at various reading series in Queens and Manhattan. She is the curator of Boundless Tales, a reading series in Queens, New York. In 2011, her first novel, The Halloween Moon, was one of the 4 semi-finalists of the Anderbo Novel Contest. She is currently working on her 3rd novel. Her website is www.aidazilelian.com. And with that, let's bring up Aida.
I want to thank Joan for organizing this lovely event, for QCA and everyone here that's out to support us. I'm going to give you very quick, important information. My novel is about an Armenian family who immigrates here in the 1970s, and there is a dysfunctional couple, Tamar and Levon, who get married, and their daughter, Araksi, runs away. Now, every time I do a reading, it's always about this mismatched couple because the husband is driven with jealousy, and I never focus on Araksi, who is the 17-year-old teenager she takes off. And in the spirit of the evening, I think it's also important to look at adolescent females and not just women who are our age or older or younger, but the teens out there. So I'm going to be reading in 2 separate excerpts. The first one, you see Araksi before she ran away, and the second one, you see Araksi after she runs away. This particular scene opens with her mother and her father. And her father is driven by jealousy, and if you happen to pick up the book and read it, you'll understand why. That evening, when they were getting ready for bed, he was quieter than usual. He had also been quiet throughout dinner, and he had not even bothered thanking her for making food. "How was your trip?" he asked. She was putting on her nightgown and brushing her hair. "Fine," she said. "How are your sisters?" The sarcastic edge in his voice made her nervous. "They're fine," she said. "We didn't do much." "You left suddenly," he said. Tamar realized that at some point while she was gone, Sophie must have mentioned that a man had called to speak to her. "I did," she said. "It was just as much a shock to me. You weren't here when it happened. It was horrible." "Who else did you see in San Francisco?" he asked and got up from the bed. "Just my sisters," Tamar said, trying to control the quiver in her voice. "Who called here before you left?" He moved toward her sharply, slowly, a hard glare in his eyes. "I don't know," she said. "Nobody. I don't remember." He grabbed her by the shoulders and dug his fingers in so deep that she let out a cry. "Please stop. You went all the way out there to meet him," he roared. "You little devil. I buried my mother and you go out there to see him." "I didn't!" Tamar chided herself for screaming. She always tried to keep her voice low so that the girls wouldn't wake up or hear them. "Please, I didn't see him. I didn't." Before she could get the words out, he had steered her in front of the mirrored closet and threw her against it with one hard shove. Tamar screamed as she felt the surface of the mirror crack against her back and small shards pierce into her skin. Someone was pounding from the other side of the door. "Open the door!" It was Araksi. "Open this fucking door," she screamed, and seconds later came bursting in. She looked around wildly and then saw Tamar on the floor. "Get out," Levon said. Helpless, Tamar stayed on the floor, trying not to move. "What did you do to her?" Araksi screamed. She lunged at her father and he blocked her with his arm. She spat in his face. "You fucking animal," she screamed. "You animal." She raced out of the room and came back moments later. "I'm going to call the police and the ambulance," she said, holding the phone in her hand. "Don't," Tamar groaned, struggling to stand up. Finally she did. "I'm okay, come help me." She held on to Autopsy and they slowly walked out. The girl turned to look at her father. He stood with his back to her. "You're a coward," she said. "You won't even turn around to look at me. That's how much of a fucking coward you are." She took her mother to the hallway bathroom and helped her slip off her nightgown. Tamar stood in her bare feet on the tile floor, shaking as Autopsy cleaned her back with peroxide and cotton. "It's just a few cuts," she said. "Nothing is stuck in your skin. I'm going to put some ointment on them and then a large Band-Aid." Her mother couldn't speak. After Autopsy was done, she walked her over to the living room and made her lie down. She covered her with a blanket, turned on one of the lamps, and left her. "What's going on?" Sophie whispered when Autopsy came back into their bedroom. "Mom and Dad had a fight," she said. "Mom's sleeping on the couch, no big deal." She hoped it was enough information to quell Sophie's curiosity. As she lay in bed, she thought of her grandmother, wondering how many of these encounters she had managed to protect Autopsy and Sophie from witnessing. She let her mind wander to the far reaches of her childhood, and a clear memory suddenly surfaced. She and her family were on the beach along with her grandmothers and aunts and cousins. Her mother had walked out of the ocean, and upon seeing her, her father, who had been eating lunch at the picnic table, pushed his plate aside and charged over to her with a towel in his hand. From where Autopsy was standing, she could see the faint line of her mother's C-section scar and the round, dark outline of her nipples. Unbeknownst to her mother, the bathing suit was see-through. She heard him screaming at her, "Fucking slut!" He yelled and dragged her off to the side. She felt the cool hand of her grandmother, Anush, guiding her toward the water and away from the scene. Years later, Autopsy would hear the word in school, slut. She would learn what it meant. Her eyes open, she stared at the darkness, slowly allowing the silence to lull her into a dreamless sleep. So this is just one piece. I wanted to read one more very small piece. In this scene, Autopsy is in the Midwest and wakes up and realizes that her friend has left her and taken all of their money. The previous evening, they were practically attacked and abducted by a homeless man. And this is the scene where she walks out of the hotel room and realizes that she has absolutely nothing. She's in the middle of nowhere, and her lifeline has left her. As she walked onto the street, a hot wind grazed over her. The streets were empty. St. Louis was not the rambunctious city she had imagined it would be. In the midst of luxury hotels and corporate buildings were empty lots filled with the noise of construction work. She could hear the faint roaring of bulldozers and jackhammers echoing through the desolate cement blocks. She walked slowly at first, struggling to digest her new predicament and wondering what to do. For a moment, she stopped and looked up at the gray clouded sky, and with immediate certainty realized that her friend had left her and was not coming back. When her money ran out, which it eventually would, she could not bear the thought of returning home. She imagined having to make a collect phone call and asking her parents to send her money so she could buy a bus ticket. The humiliation of surrender was as intense as her absolute revulsion toward her parents. And that goddamn man. He'd said his name was Tom Jones. He had told her that he had his 11-year-old daughter and they lived in a homeless shelter, and his family had refused to take them in after his wife had died of cancer. She felt sorry for him. Autopsy looked up at the sky and wanted to scream. She wondered if anyone would hear her. Now she quickened her steps, tangled in her thoughts. She stalked through the streets, wandering in aimless circles, and then from a distance saw a man walking ahead of her. He looked homeless and moved with a slight limp. He stopped for a moment to light a cigarette, and from his profile she saw that it was Tom. And for a moment she stood breathless. "Hey, you motherfucker," she screamed. She waited for the man to turn around, and before she could see his reaction, she dropped her duffel bag and was running toward him in a wild sprint. She felt the hard ground beneath her feet as she pounded across the empty lot. And when she got closer, she saw a large rock on the ground and hurled it at him as if she were throwing a big baseball. The rock hit the man on the side of his face and he almost fell to the ground. She had reached him by then and shoved him down. He fell on his back, and as Autopsy stood over him, kicking him in the face and ribs, shaking with an uncontrollable mania that had taken her over. "You motherfucker," she screamed, "I'll fucking kill you." Eventually, the man stood up and grabbed her by the wrist, trying to chokehold his arm around his neck. "You little bitch," he said through his gritted teeth. "You little fucking bitch." He could smell his sour body odor and the stink of cigarettes and liquor. She bit his hand, and when he pulled away, she managed to grab another rock, a larger one, and hit him until he fell to the ground again. She sat on top of him, punching. With his free hand, he hit her with his fist, and despite feeling the blow to her face, the piercing pain of it, she didn't falter. She saw a much larger rock a few inches away, and without much strain, she grabbed it. "Who's the little bitch now?" she screamed, and slammed a rock with all her might on the man's skull. He groaned. She raised the rock above her head, the weight of it in her hand so heavy that it almost fell from her grip, and again she heaved it down. She sat for a moment watching the blood seeping from his head. His legs were no longer moving. She knew that he was dead. Thank you. Thanks so much. Well, thank you.
Joan is such a powerhouse. This was the first event she curated, and the success of the event is a testament to that. I was really excited to be chosen as one of 10 women artists that represent our thriving borough.